Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. I haven't posted in a while, but I've been wanting to sit down and do a video that explains how I chose what med school to pick from after receiving 10 acceptances. So I'm just gonna take you all the way back to December 2020 and explain the entire thought process, because when I applied to medical school a second time in the 2021 application cycle, I definitely had the mentality that, okay, I'm going to apply to a ton of schools and do it right this time. Like, please, one school accept me and I will go anywhere that will take me. So obviously, I was not expecting to have multiple acceptances. And then when I did, I had no idea how to navigate that. How do you choose between a bunch of amazing schools? I don't know, but I'll tell you how I went about it and the things that I learned to look for, because I didn't even know about these things before. And I just feel like in general, I spent so much time and effort figuring out how to apply to med school and be successful and like just getting into med school that like the back end of that process was again another surprise of like, what the heck do I do now? I don't know how to navigate this. So hopefully this will provide some value for you guys if you have some decisions to make in the future. And also if you're curious where I'm going and you don't follow me on Instagram, then you don't know yet. So I'll tell you at the end where I chose. Okay, so let me get comfy here. Obviously you can see that I'm already in the apartment. Got my desk set up, I got a new iMac, all that good stuff. So anyway, off topic. Back to December 2020. By then I had 10 acceptances from 6 MD schools and 4 DO schools. One thing that I learned is that DO schools have really expensive deposits. And for example, Des Moines University, I got in there, but don't quote me on this, I don't know the exact numbers, just go with the general idea of what I'm saying. Like their deposit was $750 due December and then $750 due January. And then Western U, a school that I really loved interviewing at, but there's another factor I'll talk about later. Theirs was like $1,000 due December and $1,000 due January, and I had all these acceptances that I was not ready to pick by December, and I didn't want to spend $2,000 just to maybe go to that school. So basically, by the end of December, I kind of just like withdrew my acceptances from all the schools that required a deposit, which was Western U, DMU, and maybe a couple others, I don't know. I know like Neomed, that was an MD school, it was only like $100 or $200 deposit, but still like that was like due by January and I didn't want to make any decisions that early on. So again, withdrew my acceptance there. Another thing, so like I mentioned, Western U, I love that school. I loved, like, it was a small town and it's in Lebanon, Oregon, which my boyfriend George would love to live there. Like, he's from Oregon and he has like friends and family. Well, I don't know about family, but friends there. So it was a great location. I love the people. Like, they even had 2 students we met that volunteered as EMTs, which I thought was super cool because I worked as an EMT. And when I asked about that at my next interview after, they thought I was asking about like working as an EMT, and they're like, we don't suggest you have a job in med school. I was like, that's not what I'm asking. I'm just seeing if you have a program like Western U did. So anyway, I loved Western U when I interviewed there. But one thing that I learned in my first few interviews was all this emphasis on pass-fail schools, which I had no idea about before, like not at all. I guess that's just not something like I said, I learned a lot about the process of getting into med school and not about like how to choose a med school. So I learned at one of our meet and greets, so often before interviews, you'll have like, for example, the Friday before a Monday interview, you'll have a meet and greet with students. It's casual, low key, just ask questions, things like that. And these girls were like going on and harping, like when we were asking questions around like, how did you choose this school? Like all of them were like, oh, we wanted a true pass-fail school. And I'm like, that was news to me. And they explained how like, it's more likely to be a collaborative environment. It's just less stress because you're not getting ranked and like, you don't have to like try and get A's and things like that. So and that was at my meet and greet with Case Western students. So basically from that interview on, I call it my non-negotiables. So going to a true pass-fail school was one of my non-negotiables. And because like it doesn't have to be just because other people say how amazing it is, but I like all the things they said, like why they emphasized that and chose a school that was true pass-fail. I was like, yeah, I want that too. So that became like one of the things I looked for. So Western U, it's like I guess they might call it pass-fail, but it's like a fake pass-fail because it mimics the ABCD. Like, so that instead of ABCD, they have like honors, high pass, pass, blah, blah, blah. I don't know exactly, like I said, don't quote me, but something like that. So that was my like reasoning for like, oh man, I really like Western U, but I really want a true pass-fail school. So that was another reason. Also another reason for DMU, when I was talking to students there and they were asking about like kind of like their day in the life and schedule and being a med student, they were like, oh, we kind of feel like our whole lives are planned for us because they're in class from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. Whereas at other interviews, there were students that were like, yeah, we have 3 hours of lecture, they're optional, we watch them on our own time, and the rest of the afternoon is like up to us to do extracurriculars, research, study. Like obviously it's not free time. I realize med school is hard either way, but I didn't like the vibe of like that med student being like, and another girl backed him up too, just saying like, oh yeah, we feel like our whole lives are like planned for us. I was like, oh yeah, I want a more like flexible schedule kind of thing, which I'm not 100% sure I ended up with a school that really fits that criteria, but at the time that was something I was looking for to narrow down my schools. Okay, so I would say by February 2021, there are about 5 schools left, and that was Vermont Larner, which I really, really loved on interview day. We had amazing discussions, we had group interviews, we had fun group activities for our interviewing, and I just love the faculty. I was really interested in that school from the beginning because if you're a pre-med and you're about to apply to med school and you don't already listen to All Access Med School Admissions by Christian Essman from Case Western, you definitely should. In my program, Road to Acceptance, I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this podcast in every module because I've learned so much from it. Anyway, it's a good way to get a vibe of the schools beyond just looking on the website because, you know, what can you really get about a vibe from a school from a website? This is such a good way. So I listened to their podcast episode for Vermont Larner, and that's actually the reason I applied, and then I got interviewed and got accepted. So I was really excited about that school. So, I'm talking really fast and I need to breathe. Besides Vermont, I was also, University of Cincinnati, the most warm and inviting school I probably interviewed at. Like, anytime you're in a Zoom anything with them, like second look, interview day, whatever, it just feels like you're getting a big warm hug. Even like email responses from faculty, they're so nice. Like, the people at Cincinnati were amazing and probably my absolute favorite. I would say the one thing that steered me away from Cincinnati a little bit was just the fact that I'm from Ohio. And when I graduated high school when I was 18, I was like, my 2 criteria for college is that I want to ride on the equestrian team and be far away from Ohio. And I haven't really since like had any desire to live in Ohio again. And also George is obviously coming to med school with me. So that's definitely lowest on his list was Ohio. So that was a factor, is just like the location, but like the people were amazing and yeah, really awesome. Plus it's a public school and I get in-state tuition with the Forever Buckeye program. So it was a little bit cheaper tuition. Okay, and their diversity office was really, really great. Anyway, so we got Vermont, Cincinnati, and then University of Colorado. So I also loved interview day. We had group interviews, and group interviews are surprisingly really fun, guys, I promise. If you have interviews soon, don't worry about these. They're fun, at least for me. Maybe I'm dark. And so we're outdoorsy people. So when I was like, oh, Colorado, outdoorsy, cool, like cool location. So there's that. And then Wake Forest, also love the people. We didn't have an interview day. We just had like asynchronous interviews that we submitted in. I think the Vita maybe is all they used. And then we just had like a 2-hour meet and greet that I did at, there were some people wearing suits to that. And I was just like at work, like my nanny job. And like the girl kept bugging me and popping in. So it was like, I was kind of worried about that, but I don't think it had any factor on getting in, obviously. I still got in. Anyway, so Wake Forest was that one, and then the one more is Wright State University. So another Ohio school. What I loved about Wright State, they were my favorite one as far as curriculum, because like I said at the DMU, those students, they were like, oh, we feel like our whole day is scheduled for us, like blah, blah, blah. Wright State, oh my gosh, super like active learning. And the guy explaining the curriculum, he's like, we have 3 hours of lecture each day, but it's or classes each day, but it's a flipped classroom. So they prepare for the class in advance. And then when they go to class, one, the seat, you have assigned seats, but it's randomized every day. So you're always sitting by different students. Two, since you prepared ahead of time, you do quizzes and everybody has a clicker and then the questions are up on the board, he said. And so a question pops up, everybody submits their answer, and if the majority gets it right, then they move on. If a majority, like less than majority gets it correct, then they go in small group discussions to talk about it and da-da-da. So the way they were explaining the curriculum was just like absolutely amazing to me. I think the only downfalls were I was researching a bit of the school and it sounded like maybe like the students we met that day seemed super, super happy, but some things I read online, like obviously if it were in my top 3, I would have met one-on-one to ask questions, but anyway, it wasn't. And they only do rotations at community hospitals, which I didn't know if that was supposed to like a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know that it matters at all. Oh, and during my interview day, I asked, so one of my favorite interview questions, you should write this down if you want to interview soon, is what do you feel like is one thing that could be improved from the school? And one person was like, oh, that's such a good way to ask that. And I don't know. Anyway, I loved asking that because then you get like intel on what could maybe be literally improved and maybe like the downsides of going to that school. And because I feel like on interview day, they're just trying to talk it up and like make it seem amazing and I want to know the real scoop kind of thing. So when I asked that at Wright State, she said sometimes it seems like they try to push you into primary care, which you can do other specialties, but she's kind of like got that vibe and I was like, oh yeah, I don't want to feel like that. So I think that, yeah, that's all 5. So around February 2021, it was all 5 schools and I was very, very torn because I love them all. And basically on April 15th, April 15th is when we had to narrow down to 3 schools. So I don't know how we ended up deciding. I knew for sure, like for the longest time, I even looked back at my emails that I sent an email in December 2020 saying like Colorado and Wake were my top choices and like I need help deciding, can I talk to a student at Colorado? So Colorado and Wake were like top 2 for a while, I would say, mainly because of the people and I think like the location and job opportunities in Colorado for George and like we're outdoorsy, so we thought that was cool. And Wake Forest was more like small town and like I don't know, the faculty we met and like second look was like awesome at Wake Forest. And then to pick the third between Cincinnati, Wright State, and Vermont was really, really hard. I think ultimately we didn't choose Vermont. Well, one, also I got a scholarship there for $40,000 a year, but the out-of-state, it's a public school, so the out-of-state tuition is already really, really expensive. So when I crunched the numbers, it was basically ended up being the same. So for Vermont, when we looked on Zillow, there's literally like nowhere to live. And on second look day, I tried to ask the students, like, how did you find housing? Like, we can't find anything on Zillow. And it was expensive for what we did find, and we were hoping to rent a house, and there was like, literally you do the big, like gigantic circle, like 30-mile radius, and there's like 2 houses that pop up, and they're really, really awful. So that was honestly the only factor I could use to like cut that one out. The other one, okay, they have 2 different branches, like locations, and they made us choose right after interview day. And so I chose the Connecticut campus because there's more diverse patient population, which is what I wanted. But at the same time, I kind of just wanted to stay in one place for 4 years, which now looking back, I don't think I should have put that much emphasis on that factor. That was kind of one of my non-negotiables, and I don't know why now. You'll know why at the end of this video. But that was the second reason for Vermont, was that I kind of wanted to stay in the same place for 4 years, even though I picked to go to the Connecticut campus. And the housing situation, it just seemed like there was nowhere to live. And when I asked the students, they pointed me towards a Facebook group, but it still just like seemed like impossible to find housing. So that's not the best reason to cut it out, but I had to cut something out. So that's why Vermont got cut out. For Wright State, this is in Dayton, Ohio, and kind of like a random place to live. Again, basically like, if I was going to go to Ohio school, I wanted to go to Cincinnati because the people were so amazing. So that's how I cut out Wright State. It's like, if I, like, there's only gonna be one Ohio school on the list. So between Wright State and Cincinnati, definitely Cincinnati. Okay, so on April 15th, I was narrowed down to 3 choices: Cincinnati, Colorado, and Wake Forest. I was so incredibly torn and I had no idea how I was gonna make the decision. Basically, my thought process, well, I kind of had the question of like, how much should I be emphasizing cost, like tuition and loans and all that, because I hadn't got any scholarships at all 3 of those schools. Also, on April 15th, that's like the day you get all your financial aid award packages. So that's why in December, I did meet with somebody at Colorado, and I was like, this is pointless to even try and decide, because what if I make a choice and then on April 15th, I get a big scholarship package from another school and we just go there because it's cheaper. So I kind of stopped even trying to decide on a school until April 15th rolled around, because I had no idea what was going to happen with that. Also, I realized that I did not fill out the financial aid forms for Wake Forest or Cincinnati, because you don't just have to fill out the FAFSA for all the schools. So for Colorado, all I had to do was fill out the FAFSA, and on April 15th, I did end up getting a $6,000 need-based scholarship. For Cincinnati and Wake, they have, in addition to the FAFSA, their school-specific financial aid forms, and that kind of slipped past me in my email inbox, so I didn't fill them out, so I didn't get any financial aid package, and that had been the thing that I had been waiting for until April 15th to help make our decision easier, and then I screwed myself over. Dummy. So if you're watching this, you better reread your emails after you get accepted to schools for the ones you might be wanting to attend. So then on April 15th, I was like, geez, like I was hoping that I would get a big financial aid award package and this decision would be super easy, but that didn't happen. So we had to figure out how we were going to go from 3 to 1. Basically, me and George sat down and we were like, if money were not a factor, where would we want to go? And since we're like outdoorsy and like obviously Ohio was on the bottom of his list, and I like don't have any super like big desire to go to Ohio, it wasn't Cincinnati, and so we picked Colorado. And so I ended up emailing Colorado to see if they had any extra awards, like but they said no. And we're like, okay, well, I'm not gonna get scholarships, so I need to figure out like which one. So for the next 2 weeks, because April 30th is the day that I had to choose one. For the next like, not 2 weeks, like a week and a half after we sat down, I got offered to have a meeting with a alumni of Wake Forest and a current student. After that meeting, I was ready to pack my bags and go to Wake Forest. Like, I think deep down in my gut, Wake Forest was always the choice, but I felt like I should want to go to Colorado because we're like outdoorsy active people, and like my preconceived ideas of what Colorado like was, I was like, I didn't have a reason to not want to go to Colorado. So I was like, how could I not choose this like outdoors? Like I'm an outdoorsy person. I feel like I should want to go here most. And like there was nothing to cross off the list. But after that meeting with those 2 people for Wake Forest and like actually like sitting down and be like, but what has like my gut been saying this whole time? I also had a one-on-one meeting with somebody from Cincinnati just to like help me cross that off the list. And she asked me, she's like, well, what's kind of your gut feeling? And I'm like, well, I think Wake, even though we sat down and said Colorado, I know. But after I really thought about it and really thought about like what I wanted and like the people and like the things, it was definitely Wake Forest. So after having those 2 there's 3 pivotal conversations. The one with Dr. Mallory from Cincinnati, she asked me like, what's in my gut kind of thing. I was like, Wake Forest. And then meeting with the alumni and current student at Wake Forest, I was like, oh my God, I want to go now. Like these people are so amazing. I want to go here so bad. And then I met with a Colorado student. So on the Facebook group of the Wake Forest thing, the current MS1s were posting like kind of like their testimonials of why they chose Wake. And one of the things that one person posted was, he said, I didn't know this when I chose my school, but now after the fact and having friends that are students of other med schools, I realize how amazing it is to go to a private school where the professors want to go here and they're so passionate about teaching, whereas at public schools, they're on contract and they have to teach because they're working at those university hospitals. And a lot of professors will like go in and out. You have multiple professors kind of thing. So that primed the question that I asked when I had a one-on-one with the student at Colorado. I basically asked, like, is this the case? I was like, since it's a public school, like, do you feel like you've had good one-on-one relationships with the professors? And she's like, honestly, no, not until third year when I had those one-on-ones, because first and second year, she said they had, I literally, like, swear she said 400. I don't know how that's possible, but I think she said, whether or not it was 400, it was a very high number. But from what I heard, I think she said for one of their blocks, they had 400 different professors. So you don't get to know the professors. It's like they're there to teach a lecture one day on one topic, and then they're gone. I was like, oh my gosh, like that post on the Wake Forest Facebook group was so right. Like that's definitely a thing. Another thing I asked her was like, this is the first year of CU's brand new curriculum. So do you feel like there's going to be hiccups? And she's like, yeah, definitely. Like, so the MS1s then had a hybrid model of the traditional and the new curriculum. And so there's like, so she's like, yeah, there's probably going to be some growing pains related to that. Then I also asked her about Colorado in general, and she's like, yeah, it's pretty trafficy, pretty busy, like da-da-da-da. And that again solidified Wake for me, because we were excited for like the small town sleepy vibes, like, and all that stuff. So those are the three pivotal conversations I had between like April 15th and April 30th. So basically 2 to 3 days leading up to April 30th, when I had to make my decision, we had our hearts set on Wake. Like both George and I, around April 15th, sat down and we were like, yeah, Colorado, because we felt like we should want to go there. But then by April 30th and those 3 conversations, we were actually like, Wake, like it's Wake for sure. Like we wanted the small town, like George agreed too. It wasn't just me. Like we both were like, we want that small town vibe and like no traffic. And like also Zillow was huge for us. When we looked at the houses that we could rent in Wake Forest, the cost of living is so low. We could have gotten like, oh my gosh, the most beautiful house ever. Like they were so big and like so cheap. We could have gotten a house 3 times the size of what we were living in Mount Lake Terrace, Seattle area, for less like of a rent. And if we paid the same rent, like, oh my gosh, we could get like a 4-bedroom, 2,000 square foot, like big backyard. Like, oh my gosh, the houses on Zillow at Wake Forest, especially compared to Vermont. Remember how I said there was nothing? Like Wake Forest had the big houses for super affordable too. And close to campus, like, oh my gosh, it was amazing. So I woke up the morning of April 30th. We were in Oregon because I quit my job early. Even though we didn't know what school we were going to go to, I think we left like mid-April or like the first week of April. We left Washington in April. And then we spent like 2 weeks, I think, at his parents' house in Oregon. So I wake up April 30th that morning, and the doctor that I talked to from Wake messaged me and was like, I know you have a big decision. I hope you become part of the family. And I was like, yeah, I'm choosing Wake. Like, I just have to make it official and click the button. And then also the doctor that I talked with at Cincinnati, she's like, hey, like, I'm just thinking of you. Like, actually she had something else to tell me, but she's like, in case that influences your decision, like da-da-da. I was like, actually, I'm gonna choose Wake. And then around 11-ish or noon-ish, I got a call from Colorado. I just got a call.
From who?
From Colorado.
Okay. And?
You're not gonna believe this.
What?
They offered me full tuition scholarship.
Shut up.
I'm not kidding.
No.
I'm not kidding. Full tuition.
Bullshit.
I'm not kidding. He's sending the email later.
Yeah, right.
I'm not kidding.
Why? How?
And that just like blew my complete world. I didn't know what to say. I probably sounded like an idiot on the phone. And I was just dumbfounded. Like, we had our hearts set on Wake. Like Colorado was in the running for the longest time. It was always basically Colorado and Wake. And it was just hard to like, but why not choose the other schools? But it was basically always Colorado and Wake. And then after April 15th, it was Colorado. But then after that, it was Wake. And then once we decided on Wake, like, we had our hearts so set on it, I was like, should I take this? Like, I was really torn. Yeah, so I chose Colorado based on all those factors. And, well, I guess technically I chose Wake and then Colorado chose me. Apparently we only have 1 year preclinical, which, went over my head. I swear to you, I paid attention during second look events, and I think I went to multiple, like definitely the curriculum one, and I did not catch on to the fact that we only had 1 year of preclinical. I don't know how I missed that, but I totally missed that, which is crazy. Anyway, this video is probably really long, so I hope you found some value in that, or if you were just curious of where I'm going to school, now you know. So check out my other videos and all that good stuff. Also, I found a vlog editor. So in like 2 weeks, I'm gonna have my first vlog of us camping and the first day of orientation and all that good stuff. So I'm really excited for that. Anyway, okay, now I'm actually standing up. Colorado, here we come.